It's going to be wet, and even as that low pressure eases, there'll be plenty of showers around and a much cooler look to the weather deeper into next week. Bye for now.
What does it take to become a top opera star like tenor Jonas Kaufmann, Welsh bass baritone Sabryn Terfel, and Greek-American soprano Maria Callas? I'm on a mission to find out how opera is trying to attract new audiences and reinvent itself.
I think music has the power to change the world.
Take me to the opera. Watch on BBC iPlayer.
Live from London, this is BBC News. UK Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer sets out his policy to stop migrant boat crossings.
We will set up a new command with new powers, new resources and a new way of doing things. Border Security Command.
Israel's Prime Minister vows to press ahead with the offensive in Rafah in defiance of US calls for restraint.
I'm Marianne Mashiri, live here in Malmo for the Eurovision Song Contest as excitement grows ahead of the grand final on Saturday. But the controversy around Israel continues. They have qualified and will be singing in the final tomorrow.
Hello, I'm Geeta Guru-Murthy. Welcome to BBC News Now. Border security, migration and asylum seekers crossing the Channel in small boats are expected to be major issues during the UK election. Well, today the Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, is in Dover, where he's been outlining how his party will tackle them. Let's have a look at exactly what the Labour plan is. Sir Keir Starmer is promising to set up a new border security command to crack down on people smugglers if his party wins power. He's also pledging to hire hundreds more specialist investigators and cross-border police. Meanwhile, counter-terror powers would be extended to cover organised immigration, crime, including the power to search people suspected of being involved in people smuggling, close bank accounts and restrict their travel, plus trace movements before an offence has actually taken place. Labour says £75 million worth of the money allocated for the first year of the Rwanda scheme would fund their new plans.
As the first step in this plan, a new manifesto commitment. We will set up a new command with new powers, new resources and a new way of doing things. Border Security Command. Now, this is about leveraging the power and potential of dynamic government based on a counter-terrorism approach which we know works. An end to the fragmentation between policing, the border force and our intelligence agencies. A collecting of the standards. So the border protection becomes an elite force, not a Cinderella service.
Well, our political correspondent Harry Farley spoke to us earlier from Westminster about the noticeable difference now between Labour and the government approach on this issue.
Labour saying that they will scrap the government's Rwanda scheme. That's the plan to send those arriving in small boats to the UK, to send them to Rwanda. Labour saying that they would take a law enforcement approach. And as you said, you outlined the details there of the Border Security Command that Labour said they would set up. Sir Keir Starmer arguing that the government's Rwanda scheme, he characterised it in what he said was a series of gimmicks that wouldn't actually tackle the problem. He pointed to other mooted ideas, like sort of things like a wave machine in the Channel that sort of appeared in newspapers but didn't actually make it into policy. And he's saying that the Rwanda scheme is just another in those latest series of gimmicks. I think one thing just to point out is that he was asked afterwards how many small boats his Border Security Command would tackle, how many the numbers crossing would reduce. He didn't give a specific figure. He said that he would look to materially reduce the numbers coming across the Channel in small boats, but didn't put a number on it and didn't say ultimately that his scheme would stop small boats crossings. The other thing to point out is that Sir Keir Starmer made a lot in his speech about how he would improve asylum processing in the UK by putting more funding into it, by hiring new caseworkers to process those who are in the UK trying to claim asylum, and he said that they would be processed more quickly, and then those who fail to get asylum would be returned. But I think the difficult question is actually the largest group, the largest nationality that came over in small boats to the UK last year was from Afghanistan. And obviously we don't have a returns agreement with Afghanistan. Afghanistan is currently run by the Taliban. And so he said that he didn't really have an answer for where those people who come from countries like Afghanistan or even Iran would be returned to. So I think a couple of caveats there, but certainly a stark difference between the Conservatives, who were promising the Rwanda plan, and Labour taking a more law enforcement approach to the...
Harry Farley there. Well, just to let you know that in terms of the migrant crossings, the numbers that came across yesterday, there were 211 people on 3 boats were brought to shore yesterday, and it's thought 4 boats have made the crossing today. That's according to one of our reporters who's monitoring events there on the coast. Let's speak to Kevin Saunders, former Chief Immigration Officer at the UK Border Force. Thanks for joining us. Did you see the announcement from Labour, and if so, what did you make of it?
Good afternoon. Yes, I have seen the announcement. There doesn't appear to be anything new in this at all. What Keir Starmer hasn't said is what will happen to the Small Boat Command, which the Conservatives set up and which was run by a Royal Marine when we had the Navy on the Channel and the Army as well, which is all very similar to his Office for Security and Counter-Terrorism. So basically, there is nothing new in this. The thing that you've got to realise, that everybody must realise, and everybody in the business has been telling Keir Starmer this, you must have a large deterrent. The NCA have told him this. You've got to have a deterrent. If you don't
if only a tiny proportion of people coming across would ever be sent to Rwanda, is that really a deterrent for people who have risked their lives and continue to do so to get to the UK?
We only have a tiny amount at the moment. 3 other countries have expressed an interest in joining the scheme. The numbers could be as high as 20,000 that could be removed. So we've got to get away from this idea that Rwanda is only going to take a very small amount of people. Yes, initially, the first few flights, very small. But once it's up and running and other countries join the scheme, and as I say, 3 others have expressed interest in joining, this could be a really big result.
And in terms of the Labour announcement, they're saying they're going to use counter-terror powers to take on the gangs, i.e. use, in a way, I suppose, a more intelligent look at tracing those who actually organise all this. It's been described as a sort of mafia, hasn't it?
Yes, but you cannot use you can use counter-terrorism powers in the United Kingdom. You can't in Turkey, where people smugglers are based. So you know, it's nonsense, really. We already have a very effective intelligence system that's telling us what's going on, and gangs are smashed.
But Labour is saying that they're going to spend £75 million of the money earmarked for Rwanda, which many say is a very inefficient use of public taxpayers' money, to set up this new border security command. And this will be modelled on the Office for Security and Counter-Terrorism. And this will be much more effective and efficient.
It won't stop the people getting into boats coming across the Channel, because the people know that once they're here, they've won the jackpot. They've won the lottery. Once they're here, they're here. They're not going to be removed. And we heard that when Sir Keir was asked about how he was going to remove people to Afghanistan, and you can't. How do you remove people to Iran? You can't. So,
but that is because they're potentially facing, some of them will be legitimate asylum seekers, won't they, fleeing unsafe regimes?
Some of them will be, but that's not what he said. he said he would grant asylum to those that were genuine and remove those that aren't. So they're his words, not mine. So, but you can't remove anybody. Once they're here, they're here. You can't remove them.
Well, I mean, Keir Starmer said that they are going to look at that, because that has obviously been a long-standing problem for decades now, about removals back to the country of origin. But Kevin Saunders, I'm sure we'll come back to you on this in the coming weeks and months. Thank you very much indeed for your time today. Thank you. Let us move on. Now, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said that he hopes to overcome his differences with Joe Biden, but vowed to press ahead with that military assault on Rafah. Mr. Netanyahu was speaking to the US media after President Biden confirmed that the US had withheld a delivery of munitions and could halt more shipments if Israeli forces do attack Hamas in Rafah, which is a densely populated city in the Gaza Strip. Mr. Netanyahu said that Israel had to defeat Hamas in Rafah. Well, earlier, our Middle East correspondent Yolande Nell gave us the latest on the situation there.
In Rafah, we're hearing about more casualties from Israeli artillery shelling, from airstrikes that have taken place in the centre and in the east of the city overnight and this morning. A journalist working with the BBC there says there's a constant sound of surveillance aircraft, of drones overhead, and that's leaving people really on edge. Now, the Israeli Prime Minister has sought to play down the significance of the US withholding some of the weapons that it supplies because of its concerns about the offensive in Rafah, but he's also told a US talk show that he wants to overcome these difficulties with Israel's closest ally, with Washington. At the moment, those ceasefire talks in Cairo have broken down, with the delegations from Hamas and from Israel both leaving. Fundamentally, the difference remains that Hamas wants to talk about a full end to the war, the full withdrawal of Israeli troops, while Israel only wants to talk about a truce in return for its hostages coming home. Now, with battles going on close to the Kerem Shalom crossing in the southeastern corner of the Gaza Strip, and also with Israeli forces keeping the Palestinian side of the Rafah border crossing with Egypt closed, at the moment, no aid is getting into that part of Gaza, and we're getting more warnings from humanitarian agencies that in particular fuel for hospitals is going to run out in the coming day.
Yolande Nell. Well, I'm joined by Gershon Baskin, the Middle East Director of the International Communities Organization. He's also a former hostage negotiator who arranged the release of the Israeli soldier Gilad Shalit, who was held by Hamas for 5 years. He joins me now from Jerusalem. Thank you for your time today. We saw earlier this week a sense that maybe those ceasefire negotiations were going to make progress, and yet things seem to have unravelled again now. Where do you think we are?
At the present time, what we have is a situation where the gaps between Israel and Hamas are unbridgeable, because, as you reported, Hamas is demanding a deal include an obligation by Israel to end the war, and Israel is not willing to make any agreement that obliges it to end the war. And this is where we have the difficulty in bridging that gap. While Israel wants to get its hostages home, 132 hostages still in Gaza, many of them dead already, Hamas is holding on to those hostages until it achieves what it wants, which is an end to the war and a release of Palestinian prisoners. So we don't have a situation right now that is bridgeable. The mediators have walked away from the table, as well as the two parties to the conflict itself.
That is obviously incredibly alarming, if that is the case. Do you think Netanyahu is serious about going into Rafah despite the enormous risk to civilian life?
Netanyahu is interested in prolonging the war, and his attack on Rafah is similar to every attack that we've had in Gaza from the beginning of the war, where the Israeli public and the international community have been told by the Israeli Defense Force and the Prime Minister that this is the key location where the Hamas leadership is, where their bunkers are, where their ammunition supplies are, whether it be the north of Gaza, the city of Gaza, the Jabalia refugee camp, the hospital in the Shifa hospital in the center of Gaza, or Khan Yunis. We were told the same thing, and now we're being told the same thing about Rafah. The point is that you cannot defeat an organization like Hamas, a terrorist organization, with military means. Hamas is an idea and an ideology, and not just a government and a fighting force. And Israel needs to be concerned with fighting the ideology of Hamas, and that can only be done with a political endgame, which the Israeli government refuses to deal with.
If the US does pull out of more military support, will that have a real effect on Netanyahu, or is he under too much pressure from the right if he wants to stay in office to continue?
Well, he is under a tremendous amount of pressure from his own government, from the right-wing flank in his government, from himself. But if the United States withholds the weapons that Israel needs to run the attack into Rafah, Israel will have to consider how much weapons it has in stock that it needs to save in case there's a flare-up in the northern border or with Iran or any other part of this very dangerous Middle East. It could be the way to end this war, simply the United States, and for that matter, the United Kingdom and other countries that supply weapons to Israel that fuel this war, to make a calculated risk and to say, no, we're not going to fuel the war anymore. I would caveat that by saying that these countries that do support Israel should be willing to supply Israel if Israel is really under attack. But that's not the case right now. Right now, Israel is attacking Gaza. OK, we will have to leave it there. Gershon Baskin of the International Communities Organisation, thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Around the world and across the UK, this is BBC News. Now, official figures released today show that the UK economy is no longer in recession. The economy grew by 0.6% in the first 3 months of this year. The UK entered recession when output fell during 2 consecutive quarters at the end of last year. Most economists had predicted growth of 0.4%. This is the fastest growth rate for more than 2 years. Well, let's speak to our economics correspondent, Andrew Verity. Andy, talk us through the numbers.
Well, it's interesting. You just mentioned it was the fastest growth in 2 years, but that's partly because over the last 2 years, growth has been so slow. It's a low bar. Ever since the war in Ukraine, really, growth has been quite sluggish. Consumers have less to spend, partly because in the past couple of years, they spent so much on fuel and food. And so there's less discretionary spending, the stuff that makes the economy really go. Now, that situation has just changed relatively recently, of course, as inflation has subsided. And finally, pay rises have overtaken price rises. And that means that people are slowly recovering some of their living standards and being able to spend a little bit more. Jeremy Hunt was keen to say that the economy is performing well.
Well, I think it's encouraging that we, in the last quarter, have grown faster, not just than France and Germany, but also the United States. But I think more significant is the longer-term data that's coming out now about the UK economy. We can see that since 2010, we have created more jobs in the UK than anywhere else in Europe. We've attracted more greenfield foreign direct investment, not just than anywhere in Europe, but anywhere in the world outside the United States and China. In terms of the most rapidly growing industries, we have by far the largest tech industry in Europe. And the International Monetary Fund say that over the next 6 years, we will grow faster than France, Italy, Germany or Japan. And so for families who've been having a really tough time, I think they can see that the very difficult decisions that we've taken in order to get the economy back on its feet after the pandemic, after the energy shock, are beginning to pay off, and we need to see them through.
Jeremy Hunt there, the UK Chancellor. Well, when the economy is growing, what does that mean for each of us individually? Are we getting better off?
Not necessarily, Geeta, actually, and this is really important. We tell this story as if in a recession everyone's getting worse off and in a recovery they're all getting better off. That is by no means the case. So if you take the global financial crisis, for example, interest rates were cut to the floor or dropped to the floor, and that meant that a lot of people with mortgages were significantly better off than they had been before. And indeed, incomes improved in spite of the fact that the economy was shrinking. Equally, we've seen living standards fall even when the economy is growing over the past 5, 10, 15 years. So it doesn't by any means necessarily mean that we're getting better off. And in fact, if you look at the better measure of that, it's not the economy as a whole growing, an economy being just people and their economic activity, the goods and services they produce. It's divide that by the number of people, and then you find out whether we're each producing more goods and services and therefore each more likely to be better off. And on that measure, actually, GDP per capita, it's down on a year ago. Rachel Reeves wasn't as upbeat as Jeremy Hunt.
We all welcome the fact that the economy is no longer in recession, but it's hardly cause for a victory lap. And if you look at the forecasts from the OECD, who look at the major industrialised economies, they say that of those economies, of the G7 economies, the UK will have the second slowest growth rate this year and the lowest growth rate next year. I don't think that is a cause for celebration. My ambition for Britain is so much greater than merely the economy not being in recession.
So Rachel Reeves talking about growth rates, and obviously, Andy, you touched on this in terms of historic numbers, but how do these figures compare with the sort of growth we have seen in the past?
Not very well is the short answer. For the last 15 years, we've had measly growth around about the 1% a year mark, and that compares to 2 to 3%, which was the norm before the financial crisis. So all policymakers will be hoping that if we get enough investment, we can get back to those rates of growth.
Andy Verity, thank you very much indeed. Now, let us move on, and we are going to go to the royals because the Duke and Duchess of Sussex have begun their visit to Nigeria. Not technically royal, of course, anymore, or certainly not officially. And Prince Harry and his wife Meghan were greeted, though, at an event in Abuja. It's the start of a 3-day trip, which is at the invitation of the Chief of Defence Staff. Harry will attend a reception to honour military families, and Meghan will co-host an event for women in leadership. They also are going to several events together, including a visit to a school where they spoke about mental health.
So you've promised to us that after today, no more being scared, no more being unsure of mental health. If you're unsure, then ask. Ask your teachers, ask your friends. Be there for one another. If you see your friend in your class not smiling, what are you going to do? Are you going to check in on them? Are you going to ask them if they're okay? Because it's okay not to be okay.
So just like that, we celebrate all the good stuff and we are with each other even in the moments that are sad. We are just together. So we're together with you and we appreciate all of you. We're rooting for you and celebrating your birthday. Now we're going to dance.
Well, in a moment, we're going to speak to our correspondent Jenny Kumar, who's in the Isles of Scilly off the coast of Cornwall, where Prince William is. But let us first of all speak to our reporter Simi Joluso, who is in Abuja for us, and just give us a sense, Simi, there of the reaction and the reception that Harry and Meghan are getting.
Well, the kids here at this school where they visited earlier this morning were really excited to meet Prince Harry and Meghan. The couple appeared very relaxed with the kids. They met primary and secondary school children. Meghan even opened up about her own kids, saying things about how Lily, who is turning 3, enjoys singing and dancing, and how Archie, who is 5, enjoys construction. They spent the day, as you heard, talking about mental health, and the Duke, when he was speaking on stage, spoke about how the kids should not be afraid about speaking about emotions like grief or stress that they may feel, and that they should work together to conquer the stigma surrounding mental health worldwide.
OK, Simi, thanks very much indeed. Well, the Prince of Wales is visiting the Isles of Scilly today as part of a two-day tour of Cornwall in the southwest of England. And our reporter Jenny Kumar is there. Jenny, what's the reception there to Prince William?
Well, the sun's shining here and he got a very warm welcome here. He's just left this hospital, community hospital here in the Isles of Scilly, and he was asked by one member of staff how Princess Kate was doing, who recently announced that she was undergoing cancer treatment, and the response was that she was doing really well. There was also a member of staff here who has served 50 years working for the NHS, and that member of staff gave him a letter that had been written by her granddaughter, and that letter basically wished the King and Princess Kate well. And many people I've spoken to here today who have met the Prince said it was a real honour to meet him. He showed great interest in the issues and the challenges facing providing healthcare in this remote island. These islands are a group of islands that are around 28 miles off the coast of Cornwall, and whilst there are some services here, people have to travel to the mainland by plane or by boat to access services at the main hospital, and there can be some challenges around finding accommodation, which can be difficult and expensive sometimes. And today at this building there's a site where the Duchy of Cornwall, which is the estate owned by the Duke of Cornwall, as he is known, the Prince of Wales, when he is here. He's giving some land for a facility to be built here that will provide integrated health and social care. So it'll be inpatient beds, maternity suites, and residential care beds. So there was a lot of conversation here about working in the healthcare settings here. But everyone I spoke to today saying that it was a real honour to meet the Prince.
OK, Jenny Kumar, the Islands of Scilly, and Simi Jalosa in Abuja. Thank you both very much indeed. Stay with us here on BBC News. I'm Geeta Guru-Murthy.
Hello. For most of us, it feels more like summer than spring out there today. Another very warm one across large swathes of the UK. The weekend will be very warm as well. Dry for most on Saturday, but things are set to change on Sunday. The increasing chance of some heavy thundery showers. You can see weather systems waiting in the wings out in the Atlantic, but for the time being, they are being fended off by this area of high pressure. We do have a bit more in the way of cloud across the north of Scotland, the odd spot of rain here. Also this area of low cloud and mistiness rolling onto some of these eastern coasts of East Anglia and the southeast of England. Elsewhere, good spells of sunshine, highs of 24, maybe 25 degrees. And then through this evening and tonight, well, this area of cloud will roll its way in off the North Sea into parts of eastern England, perhaps getting into the Midlands as well. Also, some areas of low cloud just rolling across the northwest of Scotland, maybe affecting Shetland. Most places seeing clear skies and hence some sunshine to start Saturday morning. Temperatures not dropping too far at all. And then for Saturday, this area of cloud will tend to roll back towards North Sea coasts. For most, it's going to be fine with some sunshine, but we do have the chance for some showers to pop up. Should be quite well scattered, but across some parts of Scotland, especially over high ground, could see the odd heavy thundery downpour. Equally in the best of the sunshine, highs of 24, perhaps 25 degrees. Not a bad looking day for Northern Ireland, maybe just the odd shower out towards the west. Dry for the bulk of England and Wales, bit of patchy fair weather cloud and still some of this low cloud and mist affecting some North Sea coasts, but temperatures easily up to 23, 24, 25 degrees. But our area of high pressure starts to give way as we head into the second half of the weekend with these frontal systems rolling in from the Atlantic. So the increasing chance of seeing some heavy showers and perhaps some thunderstorms popping up as we head through Sunday, particularly across parts of Northern Ireland, Northern England, Wales, the Midlands, down towards the southwest. It may well be that eastern parts of England stay dry. We'll see some showers getting going across parts of Scotland. Still very warm though, temperatures up to 25, perhaps up to 26 degrees on Sunday. But as we head into next week, well, a very different weather outlook. It looks much more unsettled, some rain at times, feeling cooler as well.
The art of good conversation is to say the right thing at the right time and in the right way. You have to be original, sympathetic, encouraging, and also keep an open mind. And you really do just need to sit back and listen.
Catty Kay chats with prominent names from the worlds of business, science, and culture.
Influential with me, Catty Kay. Watch on BBC iPlayer.
I want to talk to you about the politics of this. Did she not think she was going to get that question?
It's important to remember that this is a negotiation.
It's a good photo of.
I have an opportunity to create chaos.
There is always an email. We are so insignificant in this cosmos. Do you want some facts on baguettes? I'm just feeding you the stories. Maybe this is The Context.
The Context, weeknights from 8 p.m. on BBC News and iPlayer.
I see myself in the girls that we're fighting for.
Climate change is real, and we must act now.
Argument is less powerful than emotion, and negative emotion is more powerful than positive emotion.
More than anything else, when we have more feminist storytellers, things will change.
When big names talk, they talk to us.
This is BBC News. I'm Geeta Guru-Murthy with the headlines. UK Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer sets out his policy to stop migrant boat crossings, promising new powers to tackle people smuggling gangs. A BBC investigation tracks down one of Europe's most wanted criminals, known as the Scorpion, who's admitted trafficking thousands of people to the continent.
Welcome to the Eras Tour.
Europe, are you ready for it? Taylor Swift's Eras Tour around the continent kicks off in Paris. Thrilling crowds with debut tracks and dazzling new fits.
But before that, Europe is ready and the world is ready for the Eurovision Song Contest live here from Malmo. I'll be bringing you all the very latest news and gossip on the BBC News channel.
Let's turn to the US. A school board in Virginia has voted in favour of restoring the previously removed names of 3 Confederate military leaders to 2 schools. The motion undid a decision from 2020, which had removed the names of the men who had fought for the pro-slavery southern states during the Civil War. Before making that decision, the school board heard arguments both in favour and against the proposal.
I'm a black student, and if the names are restored, I would have to represent a man that fought for my ancestors to be slaves. That makes me feel like I'm disrespecting my ancestors and going against what my family and I believe, which is that we should all be treated equally and that slavery was cruel and an awful thing.
Tearing down statues and monuments and erasing history while indoctrinating children is exactly what Adolf Hitler did in the late 1930s in Germany. We learn from history to become a better people.
CBS News correspondent Jared Hill told us more.
All of this goes back to 2020 when the school district there in the Shenandoah Valley area, which is a rural area of Virginia, they decided to rename these 2 schools in light of sort of the racial justice conversations that were happening in 2020 in light of the death of George Floyd, as well as a number of other black people, especially at the hands of law enforcement or at the hands of the government. That happened in 2020. There were a couple of attempts in the past to try and reverse that decision. Finally, though, we get to this space now where last night, really in the dead of the night, overnight, the school board decided 5-1 to bring back those Confederate names.
Jared Hill there. Now, one of Europe's most wanted people smugglers has been found and interviewed as a result of a BBC investigation. Barzan Majid, nicknamed the Scorpion, has organised channel crossings for thousands of migrants in small boats and lorries. BBC reporter Sue Mitchell set out to track him down with the help of aid worker and former soldier Rob Lorry. But as they probed further into Majid's life and business, it became clear he was also watching them. It was a dangerous search that began in Nottingham, where Barzan Majid used to live, and with a tip-off that a corner shop may still be working with him.
I say, please help. We need patrol. I say, please, we need patrol. We need help. Then I say, my mom is feel bad feel sick.
These are the haunting words of 6-year-old Miley. She was rescued from a boat that was sinking in the English Channel as she and her family attempted to cross from France to the UK. Because she speaks English, she was the one to call the emergency services. She begged them to come and rescue them.
Then the police come here, then take us out at the small boat. They take me and my mommy some better blankets for my mommy to feel better.
How many children were on the boat, Miley? So there was you and your brother? And four children?
Yeah, 4 children.
We're searching for the boss of one of the biggest smuggling gangs in Europe. He calls himself Scorpion. He's on the run from police and he's wanted by crime agencies across Europe.
Because I'm so excited to go to England, for go to school, for take some life. My friend is here in England. We need to next time go to England. Another day next time.
Well, let's speak now to former British soldier and volunteer aid worker Rob Laurie. Rob, just can you explain a little bit of the context of those clips that we just saw and explain how your search began on this story?
Well, the clip you just saw is a little girl that we met just last month. And she represents a little girl that I met 7 years ago in exactly the same situation. And what piqued our interest in this individual, the Scorpion, was we did a podcast a couple of years ago, The Smuggler's Trail, and when we were researching that and when we were making that podcast, this one name kept coming up time and time again, which was the Scorpion. And it seemed that the Scorpion was in contact with many migrants and refugees around Turkey and around Calais and around Dunkirk. And there seemed to be a lot of movement under his name. So myself and BBC journalist Sue Mitchell sat down and kind of piqued our interest, and we thought, well, let's have a closer look at this guy. When we started scratching beneath the surface of who he was, it just went on and on and on. The extent of human trafficking that his network was carrying out around Europe was phenomenal. And you did actually manage to speak to him? So we tracked him through France, into Germany, into Turkey. Eventually, with tip-offs from contacts I have around Germany and Iraq, we were able to locate him in Iraq. And yes, we went to Iraq, and without his knowledge, we managed to find him. And I put some questions to him. Let's have a look at that then.
How many people do you think you've smuggled through the UK?
Maybe 1,000, maybe 10,000. I don't know. I didn't count.
Thousands of passengers had your number in their phones.
I'm telling you, yeah. You're right what you're saying. Nobody forced them. They wanted to. They're begging. They're begging the smugglers, please do this for us.
You know, right? You know that smuggling through Europe is illegal and highly dangerous. You know that.
Of course.
And yet you did it.
I'm telling you, I've done them kind of things. I've done it.
So, Rob, do we know where he is now, Mr. Majid? And also, I don't know whether you have a number, but of the people that he was involved with, I know you've been working in this area for a very long time, speaking to those who are actually making these crossings. You know, how many of those are genuinely fleeing, you know, a threat in their home country, and how many of them would be described more as economic migrants? Okay, so I've been working with migrants, refugees for many years now, and I break them down into 3 categories. So what we do, we always point out the boats and the trucks, and we miss so many human stories, you know, by giving, just by mentioning the boats and the trucks, so many human stories there. So what I've broken it down into is 3 categories. You have refugees fleeing conflict. You have economic migrants. And me, for one, I've looked at that statement, economic migrants, and I've said to myself, if I was living in an economy where there was corruption and the economy was smashed to bits, myself, I would want to get my family to a better economy. So, and then we have a 3rd category that I've deemed, you know, the smugglers. People who are coming here to hurt people by human trafficking them across Europe and to hurt Western countries sorry, I'll start again.
to actually put people's lives in danger. So there's three categories. There are economic migrants. But if you consider people coming from Sudan, where there's basically civil war going on there, are they economic migrants or are they fleeing persecution and conflict? You know, it's such a wide definition, migrant/refugee.
It is very much going to remain under the spotlight, and I know many people will be listening to your work in the coming weeks and months. Rob Laurie, thanks very much indeed.
Thank you.
Well, you can hear the full story that Rob tells there with his colleague Sue. In Intrigue to Catch a Scorpion. It's on BBC Sounds or wherever, of course, you listen to your podcasts. Now, a week of severe storms and tornadoes has left a trail of damage and flooding in multiple parts of central and southeast US states. This footage was filmed in Tennessee as a tornado swept past. The driver and passenger had pulled their car to the side of the road just for safety, and you can make out the twister as it passes ahead of them. Well, power lines were brought down, several vehicles forced off the roads, and according to local media, one person was killed and several others were hurt. Let's speak to CBS correspondent Dave Malkoff in Columbia in Tennessee. What's the latest there? What's been happening on the ground where you are?
Good afternoon, Geeta. This is just south of Nashville, Tennessee. We are in a neighborhood on a hilltop, and this tornado was spinning through here at 140 miles an hour. That was an estimate. And as you go higher in a house, the danger gets higher. And the person was up there. There was a woman named Tammy who was inside this house. She was on the second floor. She just had seconds to grab her dog and get down to the bottom floor. She survived, but her brother-in-law actually saw this happen. He saw the tornado come through and explode the house. There are pieces of this house all over the neighborhood. There are pieces of the outbuildings out here. And this is just one of them that has been happening in the past few weeks. We had 2 people who died here in Tennessee, and then another person over in North Carolina near Charlotte. There was another person who died earlier this week. We have been following these tornadoes, actually driving through the U.S., tornado after tornado, and following the aftermath. We were started off in Oklahoma, and there was a person who died in the neighborhood there. It was very devastated. There was lots of debris everywhere. About 70 homes were destroyed there. And this was rated an EF3. So in the United States, it goes from EF0 up to EF5. And so this is just north of the halfway mark on how strong these tornadoes get. There is a tornado watch when there is a tornado in your area, when there's a tornado possibility in your area. Then there's a tornado warning when they know a tornado is on the ground or spinning on the radar. And then there's something beyond that, Geeta. It is called a tornado emergency. We have had 3 of those tornado emergencies just this week. And you would have to go back to 2003 to see anything like that. So that is very rare. And the danger continues later today elsewhere in the U.S. So we're keeping an eye on the forecast and the radar.
OK, well, Dave Malkoff, incredible to see what's behind you there. Thank you very much indeed for talking us through it. Thank you. Now, be honest, when it comes to T's and C's, do you actually read them? Well, if you like freebies, you might want to pay a bit more attention next time, because combing through the small print earned one diligent reader a free bottle of wine, a clause which went unnoticed for 3 months. The idea came from Dan Needle, the founder of the Tax Policy Associates think tank, who joins me now. Dan, explain more.
It was really just a childish protest. I resented the fact that I, with my tiny think tank, had to spend time writing a privacy notice that no one would care about, no one would read, and it would just annoy people going to the website as they clicked it away each time. So I thought, well, no one's going to read this. I can prove this. I'm going to put in something offering a bottle of wine to the first person to read it and contact me.
What was the wine?
It ended up being a £30 2012 French red. I don't know much about wine, but it was a good bottle of wine, I think.
And this proves, obviously, the thing that, yeah, lots of us know, which is we don't read the T's and C's, and frankly, anything could be in there.
It could. It proves that our time is wasted. Every coffee shop with a website has to put up a privacy notice. They spend time on it. Nobody reads it. why are we wasting time on this? Privacy rules are really important for the likes of Google and Facebook, but for most businesses, certainly most non-profits, just an irrelevant waste of our time. And it's a waste of everyone's time when they go to a website and have that annoying cookie notice they have to click on.
Do you have any data on how many people actually visited the website in the time that this offer was up there?
Oh, hundreds of thousands of people visited the website. Of those, just a handful looked at our privacy policy, and of those, only one contacted me.
And when was this? How long did it take?
It was just under 3 months. I think I put it up in February. So, yeah, about 3 months.
What is the solution? I know your position on the privacy policy, but is there a lesson for all of us that we should actually be a lot more careful?
Obviously, everybody should read the Tax Policy Associates website incredibly carefully because you never know what offers will be there. But otherwise, I just wouldn't bother. What a waste of our time it is.
Dan Needle, thanks very much indeed, and hope whoever got the wine enjoyed it. Around the world and across the UK, this is BBC News. This is BBC News. Now, Paris, are you ready for it? A long wait in the queue if you can tolerate it. It looks like this fan can. It's safe to say she's firmly in her Taylor Swift era. Macarena managed to catch Taylor on back-to-back opening nights of her European tour. And joins me now. And I gather you're going to go and see Taylor Swift again this evening.
And I really can't wait because last night was anything like the things we experienced last night. I think I'll never forget it in my whole life.
Tell me why. Tell me why.
Well, she completely changed the set list, a whole bunch of new outfits. The set list the set for the new album was incredible. The choreography, the dress, everything she did, got us really, really surprised. We weren't expecting it. She really hinted during the show, but yeah, we didn't expect it to be this good. So now I really want to see it for the second time.
And it's exactly the same concert tonight?
Sorry?
Is it exactly the same show tonight?
Well, with Taylor, you never know. She's full of surprises, but I do expect that it's the same show like last night. The surprise songs, the acoustic set changed show to show, but mainly it is the same show. So I'm expecting it to be, but I guess we will find out tonight.
And how is this different from the US tour of this whole tour?
Well, in the US, while she was touring the US, she hadn't released her newest album yet. So she started in March 2022 in Glendale, Arizona. And, well, everything was a surprise for the fans back then. And, well, she revisited 9 of her eras because her first one, Debut, was out of the set list, but she added some songs from her first era in the acoustic set. But now she really cut out the set list to include the newest album. And I have to say, I'm really hurt because she took out one of my favorite songs ever, Long Live, sorry for spoilers, but she needed to do that in order to add the new album in the set list because she needs to promote it as well. And I'm really glad that she did because it's amazing. You really should see it.
And I nearly bought tickets. I was offered some tickets for tomorrow night, just this week, but I couldn't persuade any of my family to come with me. So I've let them go, but I think on certain resale sites, tickets are available. For those who are coming today or tomorrow or have got tickets for the UK, does being early in the queue help you to get a better position?
I mean, I would recommend coming here early because during the Eras Tour, 2 types of tickets were sold, VIPs with early entry and the regular ones. Personally, I do have a regular ticket. So we came here 8 a.m. and there was already a lot of people queuing. And it's like, like 1:30 p.m. and there is like an endless line. And even for the VIPs, some people camped like the previous night. The venue said it was forbidden, but it ended up not being true. So I would really recommend that you come here as early as you can. Anyway, you will have an amazing time, even if you don't show up early, because like Taylor's show is meant to be seen from anywhere in the stadium. So I wouldn't worry that much about it. I would worry about enjoying it, to be present in the moment, because this tour is one in a lifetime.
Oh, well, I wish I was able to go tomorrow night. If anyone else wants to take me there, let me know. I'm on Twitter, on X, as it's called. Macarena, thanks so much for joining us and I hope you have a fabulous evening.
No, please. Thank you. Thank you so much for the interview. I'm really honored. Thank you so much.
Take care. Bye.
Take care. Bye.
Well, of course, for those of you who've got tickets, the show is tonight, tomorrow night, and of course, lots of people have got tickets in the UK too. There's another music event going on this weekend, the Eurovision Song Contest in Sweden. Excitement growing there too in the lead up to tomorrow night's grand finale. Israel is, of course, there, also with a song performed by Eden Golan. And Israel's appearance at the contest has led to thousands of people protesting in Malmo because, of course, of the war that is ongoing in Gaza. Well, we can join, I think, Mariam, who is there for us. Music, it's happened before, of course, in Eurovision. What's your sense there as to how much the politics is intruding?
Well, the EBU, those who organise the Eurovision Song Contest, Geeta, will want you and I to talk about the music, because for them that's what it's about. The slogan, United by Music, which was coined in Liverpool last year when they held Eurovision there, is very much the focus for them. But of course, politics is involved, because as you can see, and as you've seen by those pictures, there have been protests at this 68th Eurovision, annual Eurovision. The protests were peaceful, they were loud, there were maybe about 6,000 to 10,000 people, and we're expecting more protests, Geeta, to happen tomorrow. And the protests are all about the Israeli entrant, Eden Golan, and her song Hurricane. Now, protesters did not want her to be included in this year's Eurovision. The EBU, though, decided to keep Golan's entry in, and she has made it into the grand final tomorrow. Important to add at this juncture that Israel has been taking part in the Eurovision Song Contest since 1973, and they have in fact won it 4 times. And they are second favourite to win it this time as well. If you look at the odds narrowed markedly after Eden's performance in the semi-final last night. So that is what's happening in terms of Israel. But it's important to say that this is a music competition and there are many, many acts, 26 in fact, performing tomorrow night. And it's going to be viewed by about 200 million viewers around the world. One of those acts, of course, is the UK's Ollie Alexander with his song Dizzy. He is really excited about the performance. It's a very interesting one in terms of staging. He's inside a box, and at the end of the song, he comes out of the box. He then moves onto stage to finish the song. And a little bit earlier, my colleague David Silito talked to Ollie about the staging and about what the staging actually means for the song. Have a listen.
So the stage, our prop, there are some bars built into the side at different bits. They're kind of built into the side of the walls. So the dancer, so sometimes one of them will literally grab on like that and then turn themselves upside down so their feet are on the ceiling and their head are towards there. But then when the camera's flipped, it looks like they're stood on the floor.
So that's Ollie Alexander there talking about his staging. So let's take a listen now. Let's take a pause and think about staging for Eurovision, because it is so important. Think about this. It's a concert with thousands of people in the arena watching it, but it's also being televised to hundreds of millions of people around the world. And that level of getting that staging right is so difficult. It takes months and months of planning, and it takes a lot of work. A little earlier, I caught up with two men who are involved in that staging. I spoke to Florian Wielder and to Frederick Stormby. They are the guys. One of them is behind the staging, one of them is behind the lighting. And they spoke to me about how difficult it is to try and get that staging just right for Eurovision. Have a listen. What's
interesting about Eurovision is the audience. It's just a special energy in the audience. And I was looking for the best possible way to capture this and get this connection between talent and audience. And this is why I decided to play this year in the round. And so the stage is actually placed somewhere in the, more or less in the center of the room.
And how much do you work with the different countries that are involved with what they want from the stage?
There are, well, no, we are not talking to them prior to the design process. So the design is what it is the producers and the people who are responsible for the show like it, and that's it actually. And then they more or less have to deal with it, but in a hopefully positive way. You obviously deal with the lighting, don't you, Frederick? That is a really big responsibility because, to be honest with you, as we all know in television, at least, lighting is everything.
It is, yeah. Lighting and screens. It's a lot of it. Yeah, with the concept, the 360 concept, and a lot of cross shots and the audience around the whole stage, it's.
So those are the guys responsible for some of the staging. Now the stage is well and truly set. The grand final takes place tomorrow, Geeta. There are going to be 26 acts vying for the jury's vote and for the public vote. They include, of course, the 20 who went through on the semi-finals, but also the 5 big countries who always go through, regardless. They're Italy, France, Spain, Germany, and, of course, the UK. And, indeed, Sweden will be kicking off all of the event with their song. They are first off tomorrow. So a lot of excitement, as I said, building here. I'll have more throughout the day here on BBC News. Back to you, Geeta.
Mariam, thanks very much indeed. And we are back in a few minutes. Don't go away. I'm Geeta Guru-Murthy. This is BBC News.
Hello. For most of us, it feels more like summer than spring out there today. Another very warm one across large swathes of the UK. The weekend will be very warm as well. Dry for most on Saturday, but things are set to change on Sunday. The increasing chance of some heavy thundery showers. You can see weather systems waiting in the wings out in the Atlantic, but for the time being, they are being fended off by this area of high pressure. We do have a bit more in the way of cloud across the north of Scotland, the odd spot of rain here. Also this area of low cloud and mistiness rolling onto some of these eastern coasts of East Anglia and the southeast of England. Elsewhere, good spells of sunshine, highs of 24, maybe 25 degrees. And then through this evening and tonight, well, this area of cloud will roll its way in off the North Sea into parts of eastern England, perhaps getting into the Midlands as well. Also some areas of low cloud just rolling across the northwest of Scotland, maybe affecting Shetland. Most places seeing clear skies and hence some sunshine to start Saturday morning. Temperatures not dropping too far at all. And then for Saturday, this area of cloud will tend to roll back towards North Sea coasts. For most, it's going to be fine with some sunshine, but we do have the chance for some showers to pop up. Should be quite well scattered, but across some parts of Scotland, especially over high ground, could see the odd heavy thundery downpour. Equally in the best of the sunshine, highs of 24, perhaps 25 degrees. Not a bad looking day for Northern Ireland, maybe just the odd shower out towards the west. Dry for the bulk of England and Wales, bit of patchy fair weather cloud and still some of this low cloud and mist affecting some North Sea coasts, but temperatures easily up to 23, 24, 25 degrees. But our area of high pressure starts to give way as we head into the second half of the weekend with these frontal systems rolling in from the Atlantic. So the increasing chance of seeing some heavy showers and perhaps some thunderstorms popping up as we head through Sunday, particularly across parts of Northern Ireland, Northern England, Wales, the Midlands, down towards the southwest. It may well be that eastern parts of England stay dry. We'll see some showers getting going across parts of Scotland. Still very warm, though. Temperatures up to 25, perhaps up to 26 degrees on Sunday. But as we head into next week, well, a very different weather outlook. It looks much more unsettled, some rain at times, feeling cooler as well.
The art of good conversation is to say the right thing at the right time and in the right way. You have to be original, sympathetic, encouraging, and also keep an open mind. And you really do just need to sit back and listen.
Catty Kay chats with prominent names from the worlds of business, science, and culture.
Influential with me, Catty Kay. Watch on BBC iPlayer.